Thank you everyone for being here and being on time. It's nice to see everybody. I haven't seen you all collectively in a group. I've seen folks in smaller working group meetings, but it's nice to get together again. I'm just going to quickly go through our norms, which we start off every meeting with. Roman, if you could go to the next slide, please. Oh, and the next one. So I do want to note this event is being recorded. You should have gotten that message as you entered. We do ask that you try to be fully present today. This is largely a working session and your participation is very valued and needed. You can use video to stay connected and try to avoid back channel conversations and stay present in this one. If you're not speaking, we ask that you mute, and you can use chat or raise your hand to relay something. And we'll monitor both of those, the chat and the hand raises, to make sure we're lifting up your voices. And then always be kind to us and one another, and know that we might have some technological hiccups. Next slide, please. Oh, before we dive in, I just wanted to quickly thank some of you I know attended a meeting on Monday that we co-hosted with MDRC, the Green Jobs Forum. Rachel Ronson with MDRC's Center for Effective Career and Technical Education, who has attended many of these network meetings, we'd been talking about some collaborative event, and we co-hosted a brainstorming idea generating session Monday. That session really started with a question that's been front and center in this space with you. That question is, what will an environmentally sustainable and just economy look like? And in the coming weeks, a blog will be produced and we'll be sure to share it out with all of you. So where have we been? This group meeting for almost a year now. Actually, it is a year now. This is our 10th meeting together. And if there's anyone who is new and hasn't joined one of these meetings in a while, please say hi in chat, and we welcome you. The Green Economy Network is a partnership that is working towards an environmentally sustainable and socially just economy, one where high quality jobs are carbon neutral and accessible to all. We have been coming together, aligning data, policy, practice, workforce economic development to build a community of practice and purpose among all of your organizations and people working in the green economy. And I want to remind you all that Jobs First is a convener and a facilitator that is supporting the network, but all of you are needed to drive it forward. And just a quick review, in our last meeting, we discussed the Civilian Climate Corps. And some of the things we heard about that is it's asking for young, marginalized people to be centered in the green economy and in plans coming out around the green economy. And they are asking for an increase to the AmeriCorps stipend to meet minimum wage. We also discussed local and federal workforce policy. We don't really have much to update around that, but in our last meeting, we asked what could and should this group do to influence money coming into the city. And we refined our vision together and learned about different partnership models and workshop those models. Next slide. So 23 unique agencies filled in the membership form for the Green Economy Network. These are the logos of those agencies, and 40 people from these and other agencies opted into one of 4 working groups, which we're going to hear from today. All working groups have met since our last meeting, and 3 working groups have a priority goal, which I'll review on the next slide. So the employer partnership and economic, can everybody mute? or I'm getting some feedback. Thank you. So the Employer Partnership and Economic Opportunities work group is focused on the first goal you see here. I'm not going to read through them now. We'll be working on these as working groups later, but you see them here. The Policy and Advocacy working group is working on goal number 2, and the Training and Wraparound Services working group is working on goal number 3. So those kind of bubbled up as the priority goals for those 3 working groups, and the strategy working group is kind of, well, driving strategy for the network and considering all of these goals and the other goals that have been established through our process. If you are not already a member of a working group and would like to help advance the Green Economy Network, my colleague will put a link in chat to a form where you can opt into one of those working groups. Next slide, please. So this slide and the next slide, I have probably broken slide rules 101 of putting way too much stuff on a slide. I just wanted you to see all that we've done. This is a PDF document in the public folder. So after the meeting, not now, you can take a look at it. You could show the next slide as well, Roman. And you will see since September 2020 through July 2021, we have held all of these events, had all of these speakers and activities and workshops, and you have all been participating and done, or most of you have been anyway, and have moved this process forward with us. And next slide, please. So we are in JobsFirst 5-step process, we are moving through and kind of bridging between the imagine and incubate phases of the work. We have been designing the partnership, and in the next month and a half, working groups will continue to meet, and we will be building out today some of the strategies that the working groups are going to use to accomplish those priority goals. And in the past year, we have accomplished things that you see listed here. I'll call out a few. The problem definition, we have done, we have baseline data analysis, including the labor market conditions, the market demands and economic opportunities. We have, with you, identified partners, other key stakeholders, identified opportunities to align around. And I will not bore you reading through this. We can also find this in our public folders. But most important, and what we will continue working on today, is that we have established these priority goals, these working groups, drivers, and long-term plans. And next slide. Today, we are going to, so this is the roadmap of like where we've been and what we have left to do in the coming months. But today we are going to focus on generating ways to accomplish our goals. And next slide. So today, our objectives are really to learn about NYSERDA's clean energy hubs. There's an RFP out, and we have Beta Broad from AEA to talk about that. And she will help us think about what opportunity it might present for the Green Economy Network. And we will learn of each other's working groups' progress over the past 2 months. And the working groups are going to have time to break out, do some brainstorming activities, and develop strategies. And we are going to share out some of those strategies as action items coming out of this meeting. Next slide, please. And today's agenda was shared in advance of this meeting, so I will not hold us back from hearing from Beta. I'd like to invite you up. Beta is the Director of Advocacy and Organizing for an Association for Energy Affordability. And she has been joining the training and wraparound services work group, and has agreed to come and talk about that NYSERDA RFP. So next slide. And if we could identify Betta in the group and spotlight her.
Hi, thanks, Carrie.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. It's really exciting to, be a part of this network and this initiative. And my colleague, Diane Gonzalez, has been probably more involved than I have. So, I've been joining when I can, but when I have been able to join, I've just been really impressed and excited about this collaboration. So really appreciate getting to be a part of it, and hope that I get to know many of you better in this process. Just want to warn you that I was up all night with a sick kid and did not sleep, and the babysitter didn't come because he's sick. So at the moment he's with my partner, but I may be pulled away and may not be as coherent as I would like right now. But in any case, I didn't want to cancel, and wanted to just get to share with you all, this exciting opportunity with the clean energy hubs, and a little background and why it might be something that the Green Economy Network and members would want to collaborate with us on. So, AEA has been in the energy space, energy affordability space, hence the name, Association for Energy Affordability, for a long time. And, along with a number of other kind of community-based organizations working to advocate for clean energy and, energy efficiency, weatherization, solar, and really connect people with the programs that the state offers, and make sure that people have access, and that these programs are inclusive, and everybody can participate in the transition to a clean energy economy. A number of groups, including AEA, got together over 2 years ago and just started kind of brainstorming how could we build this movement, and hopefully get funding and support from the state, and really partner with a lot of local, agencies, governments, as many kind of, sorry for the noise, CBOs as possible, to create something that would be kind of a holistic hub where people could get access to clean energy programs and participate in the green economy locally, and make it, as kind of easy and painless and as possible, because a lot of times these programs are very siloed, and we haven't, had the kind of mass participation that we would like to see, not only for the climate and for sustainability, for improving people's lives, people's health, but also we're mandated now by law with the CLCPA, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which mandates that 35 to 40% of benefits go to disadvantaged communities, that we do have an inclusive, equitable transition to a clean energy economy. So long story short, we started meeting, with these handful of groups, and kind of grew that network. And, similarly to this type of initiative, it was just, groups that really cared about this issue and an equitable transition to a clean energy economy. And eventually it led to a co-design process with NYSERDA, where CBOs and advocates worked with NYSERDA to create this program that was just announced, and we're very excited about it. Over $36 million that is going to be going to regions across the state. Hang on one second. I'm sorry. I have this background noise. I'm just going to try to close the window. Okay, sorry. The joys of working from home, we all know so well. That window right there. Yeah. I don't know if there's background noise. Anyway, I apologize. So the RFP is now out, and essentially, every economic region in the state is going to get funding. New York City, which we would propose deserves like a bigger amount of the funding, considering we have like half of the people in the state. But as of right now, it's $6 million for New York City over the next 5 years. And that will go towards, will be a collaborative process of organizations that will help New York residents tap low and moderate income residents, and in particular disadvantaged communities, tap into these clean energy programs so that they can access weatherization, energy efficiency, and community solar, and maybe even solar on their rooftops. And so it's an exciting opportunity. And the idea is that there won't just be one, organization that's leading this effort. It's really meant to be a partnership with a number of different organizations. And that's what's going to make it successful, is if it is this like part, we don't want it to be a competition as it often is with these, RFPs, where it feels like Hunger Games. And instead of, supporting each other and working together for the goal that we all want, we end up competing for limited resources. So we really hope that, we can come together, in partnership, and if we need to, we'll push for more money. And we actually do have a letter from a number of advocacy organizations that worked on this hub, that to push the state and the governor to allocate more funding for New York City. And I can circulate that letter if any of your organizations would like to sign on to it. That would be great. And fingers crossed, we'll be successful as we were with, getting this RFP in the first place in this program. But, it's really going to take each region working together to determine, the success of the hub, how many people participate, and most importantly for all of you, the role of workforce development and jobs. And because we know that, without massively scaling up training and workforce development and engaging all communities in New York, especially disadvantaged communities, and bringing folks into this workforce, which I think is why we're all here, we're not going to get there. Again, like, we're mandated by law to do it. It's the right thing to do. And to be successful, we have to do it. So it's, the RFP is not like super prescriptive on that. I think literally we're making this up as we go along. And so we need, everybody's great ideas and creativity and imagination, to come to the table. And we would love to work with you on developing a really strong workforce development and job training component to this, so that when we're active in communities and we're educating about the clean energy programs and expanding, people's access to those programs, and hopefully, really improving people's daily lives, we can also say, here's this great opportunity to plug into a clean energy career pathway, and have it be a process with a lot of support and hand holding, and the kind of wraparound services that many of you work on day in and day out. And I really applaud you for all of the fantastic work that you're doing on the ground, and would love to bring that expertise to this, so we can make this a truly successful project. And it'll be over the next 5 years that we'll be working on it, maybe even beyond that, but the grant would be for 5 years. And what else can I say? That is, yes, if I'd had time to prepare this morning, I probably would say more, but hopefully that's enough, and we can just kind of open it up. If you are interested in having, a meeting to kind of start brainstorming ideas and learning more about kind of, what we're thinking, and are interested in collaborating with us, please let Carrie and me know, and we can put our emails in the chat. There's also a webinar that NYSERDA hosted. Was it 2 days ago? The first of two. And that recording is available, and the slides. And there's going to be another one if you want to dig into the RFP, if you want to read it. The summary is like 28 pages. It's not that painful. But again, there's not a ton on the workforce piece of it. I think it's really up to all of us to come up with a successful and creative program that can work in New York City. And it may end up with Dave Heppenstall, the executive director of AEA, thinks it would probably make sense for, maybe a couple of boroughs to partner and, on a particular program and focus. And, we'll see. I mean, again, we're figuring this out as we go, but would really love to figure it out with you and have the Green Economy Network participate in this. Thank you, David, for putting the link in the chat to the webinar. The second webinar is on October 28th, and they're very good about answering questions. And then, if you can't make it on the actual day, you can watch the recording. So yes, and we're really continuing to push the envelope with, developing better buildings and also jobs programs in New York State. And so I'll just throw in this letter. This is a different letter. I don't have a form for the letter I mentioned. I can email it to everybody, but this is a different letter that we're going to be sending to Governor Hochul to really go big on green affordable housing and an equitable transition for our buildings to decarbonize, and paired with a really strong workforce development and job program. So if anybody's interested in that letter, we're going to be submitting it in a week from now, hoping, fingers crossed, that Governor Hochul will really make a big commitment to, decarbonize our buildings equitably. So I put a link in the chat to that form. And while I have the floor, we also have an event coming up on October 20th on weatherization and green jobs and the clean energy economy that people might be interested in. And so I put a link in the chat to that. So anyway, happy to, talk to anybody also one-on-one if you're interested, in kind of getting to know our work better. And I'd love to learn more about your work. But, as I said, Carrie and I are going to be organizing a group meeting for brainstorming about this RFP, and would love to see you at the meeting. So did I miss anything, David? I know you did the RFP too. The webinar about the RFP. So if I missed any critical information, please chime in.
No, I think you covered all of the basics. A few additional details just to keep in mind, especially for groups that are already thinking about pursuing this RFP seriously and want to know what the issues are. One is that there were a lot of good questions raised during the webinar that led to the panelists from NYSERDA pointing out that they will present a expanded and somewhat modified FAQ next week, because so many people had good questions covering some items that they might have missed in their current FAQ. Also, any CBO that's applying to be the lead recipient, which of course the lead recipient can work with sub recipients, all of which might be CBOs. The lead recipient must have some experience in clean energy economy, is the exact words from NYSERDA, experience in the clean energy economy, but they didn't define what this means. So it could mean a lot of different things. Also, they're purposely trying to keep it very open in terms of how the grant can be used. So literally the only thing that they explicitly ruled out in terms of spending was construction. So very flexible in terms of what can be spent. And they're trying to be accommodating to what the kinds of work that might be involved are. So as I pointed out, they want people to help certain types of communities and work with certain type of groups, but these are flexible definitions. So almost any group that wants to try to get this RFP grant and thinks that it meets the sort of basic criteria should definitely dive into the details. And the webinar recording, which I shared in chat and can reshare, It's very useful, and I highly recommend for anyone who wants to pursue the RFP to join the second webinar on October 28th, and the links to all of this will be in the chat.
Thank you, Dave. And Betta, you are definitely MVP today. We wouldn't have known that you were sleep deprived if you didn't tell us. You were extremely well prepared, and we really appreciate you showing up. Just want to open the floor and if anyone has questions before we, I think Chris Collins has a question.
Yeah, hi, Betta. Great to see you. We should talk because we've also been going to these webinars, and I think SolarWinds probably going to consider submitting a proposal. So we should talk and figure out ways we might be able to collaborate throughout all of it. I was really glad to hear the presentation and what you're thinking about. So we'll try and find time to talk through some of that stuff.
Would love that. It'd be great.
Chris, if I could just mention, I'm Dave Heppenstall. I'm
Hey, Dave.
also here. How you doing? And it would be very useful to talk. You should all know that AEA is, of course, seriously considering directly applying, and as probably the whole weatherization network would be engaged, but there's a lot of room for partnership opportunities in the way they've structured this. So we certainly should talk.
Looks good.
Excellent. Anyone else have a question for Betta or just discussion for the group? Okay. Well, thank you again, Betta, and we will keep in touch about this, and I'm sure some people will reach out to form a little task group to figure out how we could leverage this opportunity for the network.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I believe I am tossing it over to Dave. Scott.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah.
So for the next section, we're going to talk about the working groups. For many of you have already been here for many months and already know about this, but I'm going to recap this anyway, and especially for new members should be useful. So most of the actual body of work that will be produced by the Green Economy Network going forward is going to come out of the working groups, which are, first of all, open to everyone. So want everyone who's in this meeting who hasn't already joined a working group, feel free to contact us and we will connect you with one of these groups if it's something that you're interested in. And they're working on the core activities that are really going to be what Jen is working on, right? Jen's focused on trainings, it's focused on employment, it's focused on policy, and of course, it's focused on making policy a reality, which is to say through advocacy. So our 4 working groups, thank you, Roman, are strategy, training and wraparound services, employer partnership and economic opportunities, and policy and advocacy. And there's of course some overlap between what these groups are doing, but we're trying to make it that each team can really focus on one core aspect and thus leave everything else to other teams so they can be most efficient in how they're working. And of course, all of these groups are sharing information with each other. They're going to share information with the network as a whole. And once we get our websites and other tools for sharing information to the public fully up and running, it'll be the easiest way for people who are both in the network and not in the network to find out about what the network is up to, what opportunities are available, joining the network, all of that. So just to go around, going to quickly introduce all the groups, and then after do the quick introductions, each group is going to do just a quick share out of what it's learned so far, what it's accomplished. These groups are relatively, I shouldn't say relatively, they're quite new. All of the groups have had their first meeting within the past, I want to say 5 weeks. So unsurprisingly, there are no major accomplishments yet. The groups are still figuring out exactly which projects they want to take on, in which order, how they want to tackle them. But just to give a quick share out about what they're working on so far, what they're thinking about. This will be a good opportunity for the working groups both to learn from each other about some best tips and to share out with everyone else in the network who's considering joining one of these working groups, or for people who are new to the network to learn about them at all and decide if it's something they want to be a part of. So in no particular order, policy and advocacy is led by Eric and Anel. We'll talk in a minute. Training and wraparound services led by Diane. Employer partnerships and economic opportunity led by Jennifer and Stephanie. And strategy led by Kathleen, Tanya, and Jen. If we want to start, let's start with policy and advocacy. If team wants to give a quick shout out about the group, it's accomplished, or anything else of note. And of course, there will be time for questions throughout the session. So if anyone has questions now or later about working groups generally or one of the working groups specifically, feel free to ask.
Great. Thanks, David. So Eric, if we want to tag team to give a brief overview of our group, we've had 2 meetings so far. And the first one was a great introduction, and we were pretty ambitious. So we kind of also got the ball rolling on and thinking about what next steps were and how the group would naturally kind of fall into place on these different, like what our strengths were or what our strong interests were in developing around policy. So we are tackling, as David mentioned, goal number 2, and we've been looking at and talking about understanding the landscape. So before we look at setting policy priorities for Jen, looking at what is the overall landscape and how can we do some asset mapping and conduct some surveys to really kind of situate ourselves and create a baseline for what exists in New York, but also kind of peeking to see how we can set a standard across, across barriers geographically. Anything else that you want to share, Eric? I mean, that was a lot of what we discussed. And like I said, looking at within policy and advocacy, what are the different strengths, and can there be working groups, or I guess more, subgroups within our group that can drive different points of the work?
Yeah, I think that's an amazing introduction, Anel. Thank you. And thank you especially to David as well for helping facilitate. I would just add that our group is a really good mix of government folks, nonprofit folks, people who have connections in the employer world. And so we're definitely looking for other folks who are interested in taking the goals of the Green Economy Network to a more policy level. It's also something that's a high priority of ours. I think has come through strongly in our discussions to work very closely with all the other committees to make sure that the goals that we're advocating for are reflective of what else is going on in the network. So definitely encourage anyone who's interested to join us, and I think we'll have some real momentum behind us.
Thank you both. And let's go to, I think, training and wraparound is up next. Diane, do you want to
hi, Dave.
talk about your group?
I was unmuting. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. As Dave mentioned, this is the training and wraparound service group update. On September 17th, the wraparound group met to really introduce themselves and speak about the roles that they have within their organizations. And they went into real detail about what they do and what those services are for their clients. We also decided to collect and send out a survey so that we could gather this information and share with not only the group, but the entire network. Within the first discussion, we spoke about identifying certain pathways into careers, and it led to people asking about, all right, what are those jobs out there and how we can identify those particular industries. And the group also mentioned that they wanted to increase their wraparound resources. So on touching on the first topic, which was to identify potential green industries, we reached out to Workforce Development Institute, who presented on session 2. We had folks called Elliot Crosswell, who was the Workforce Development Institute director, yeah, and he spoke about what they're doing statewide, nonprofit, with focusing on offshore wind opportunities. And then we had Lisa Futterman, the regional director of workforce development, speak about the businesses that they're involved in, the tasks that she takes on. And one of the things that she discussed was that she supports funding and identifying certain funding opportunities. And I think that was really what we came out of that meeting, really identifying that there's a resource through Workforce Development Institute if any of the workforce agencies that are present are seeking to allocate funding and support specific structures within their network, within workforce. They're interested in helping in that arena. I think I covered everything on that, Carrie. Was there anything that you think I've overlooked?
No, Diane, you did a great job in preparing and reporting out what we've been talking about in the training group. And quite a few people in the chat have indicated that they would like to join that group. So your group is growing, Diane. And I think the only thing we want to let people know is that Diane would love to have a co-lead. All the working groups have co-leads except for this one. So if you are interested in supporting the progress of the working group, you could talk about that a little bit more in the breakout session.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next, we have employer partnerships and economic opportunities.
Hi, everyone. So the Employer Partnerships and Economic Opportunities group has met once. We focused in on sort of the 2 focus areas of our group are building out employer engagement and then also on job quality. So in employer engagement, really wanting to look into ways that we can be attracting employers, influencing the industry, and having this shared understanding of how we are approaching how we are approaching the Green Economy Network, and having this common language around employers and what it means for someone to be prepared to enter into the green economy. The other side that we talked about was job quality and having a network standard of job quality. So that when we are approaching employers and we're pushing employers to have these quality jobs, that we have a unified, this is what we expect, this is how you're able to engage within the industry, especially at a time when employers are looking for talent, to set those baselines so that we are all able to have a unified front in pushing for those improved qualities and the job opportunities for the folks that we advocate for. Jennifer, is there anything else that I missed? What else should we add in?
So I would just add that that for us, the group has a pretty concrete target, which is to create a live and dynamic jobs board, of which is populated by these jobs that are defined by job quality and what green also means. So for us, we're in the process of creating those definitions to use in part to screen the employers that should be part of this sort of dynamic job board.
Great. Thank you both. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the strategy group, our only working group with 3 co-leads, Kathleen, Tanya, and Jen. And I think Tanya is going to go first in describing.
Sure. Thanks, Dave. Hi, good morning, everybody. Yeah, so the strategy working group is an evolution in our second year of the Green Economy Network. In the first year, the sort of entity was being driven by these three co-lead organizations and Jobs First. And we had priority responsibility for designing and forming what the monthly meetings would be like. We had brainstorming working sessions around how we can move this network forward. And now in this second year, we really want to have this strategy group take on that role of designing and driving the direction, being informed by all the working group priorities that will roll up into how we prioritize as a group what we should look at as outcomes in the short and longer term. So some of the things we talked about in our sessions, like the others we've just started, included what do we want to define as the capability, reputation, and impact of the Green Economy Network. We talked a lot about trying to align with metrics and outcomes within 6-month benchmarks of timing, 1 year, what should be the top things as a network we want to have accomplished. We talked about the network being a platform that could hold decision makers accountable and how they approach investments and policy related to the Green Economy Network. And we talked about wanting to have a roadmap to for local electeds to understand how they can roll out like long-term plans that will not just be sort of a moment in time, sort of check the box around green economy, but really a holistic path informed by aligned narratives and messages that we as a network have internally and externally, so that we have common language that we use consistently in messaging what we believe the Green Economy Network is and should be, and how that should inform and drive decisions in New York City and the state level. And I invite Jen and Kathleen to add anything that I might have missed out.
That was great, Tanya. The only thing I would add is I think that, you know, as this like kind of decentralizing the folks that were kind of driving the agenda in the first year, we are really seeking ways to kind of strike a balance between supporting all the goals of the other kind of working groups that have substantive goals, and also being responsive to all of you that are here today and figuring out like how, for example, what Betta presented earlier in the agenda, like what other kind of presentations like that do all of us here today want to hear? And then this group will make sure we line up the right speakers and partners and things like that for those types of presentations. And then lastly, I think the not fun stuff that we want to do is really like delve into like and figure out what the commitments are. So like, what does it mean to be a member of the Green Economy Network? What are kind of the eligibility requirements and the commitments you make when joining? So it's like more of the administrative background stuff, not as fun, but pretty important. And so pretty important in order to make sure that the Green Economy Network overall is sustainable and that there's kind of like mutual accountability measures built into that sustainability.
Great, and I don't have anything to add to what Tanya and Jen have already shared, other than it's just great to see so many people here today and to hear so much from the other working groups. And we as our group are just really excited to propel this all forward.
Thank you all. Before we go into the next section, want to see if there are any key questions right now, especially it's one of the few opportunities for all 4 working groups to actively be in the same virtual room with each other. So anything that the working groups want to ask of each other, ask of the network as a whole, or if anyone who's not in the working groups has any key questions now. Obviously, we're going to collect all the questions. So if anyone has questions later in the meeting or next week, send them all our way. While people are thinking about questions, I want to mention that one of the most common questions I've received from people who are considering joining one of the working groups or already decided to join the working groups is, what is X group going to work on in terms of projects, and what is the timeline, and what's the measure of success? And I want to be clear that these working groups are all deciding for themselves specifically which projects they're going to work on. So within the framework of policy and advocacy, it's a huge umbrella, and the dozen-ish members of that group are deciding which areas of policy they want to work on, how they're going to figure out the plan, how they're going to split up who's working on what. So for anyone who's considering joining one of these groups and isn't sure what the projects are going to be, remember that as part of that group, you're going to be influencing the discussion of what they're going to be working on. And of course, the groups are going to continue working with each other. I mean, probably the clearest example is that the employer partnership and economic opportunity group is going to be talking a lot with the policy and advocacy group about how to create good policies, private and public policies regarding employment. But of course, the training group is going to be working also closely with the employer group because they're so linked to what they're doing. So anyone who wants to join one of these groups, just remember that your voice matters a lot because these are relatively small group. I think our biggest group is about 16 people right now. So each voice really does matter in these discussions.
I didn't see any hands raised, Dave. If anyone has questions for any of the working groups, just raise your hand now, or Dave will describe our breakout activity while I try and assign people to breakout rooms based on working groups they're already in, because for some reason the pre-assignment didn't work right. So while you describe, I'll be trying to organize.
Great, thanks, Carrie. So, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, David. The only thing I would just ask is if folks can put in the chat, like ideas or wants or things they want more information on, similar to the presentation earlier in the day by Meta. Is there like, you know, are people really confused by the pending federal legislation? Do people want to know what the who the new city council environmental chair is and what they think? So anything that people have interest in, because then we will of course follow up and schedule substantive presentations for follow-up meetings.
Thanks, Jen. And of course, concurrent with that, if anyone knows someone who would be a great asset to present at a future network meeting, please let us know, and we would love to have that person or that group present in future. But I will open it back up to questions. And if there are no questions, I will start to describe the next activity. So since we have this pretty unique opportunity where we have the 4 working groups together and we have the network as a whole, what we wanted to do is give an opportunity for people who want to join one of the working groups but haven't already to be able to peek into the working groups today, while the working groups themselves are going to work on an activity to really help coalesce their thoughts. And one of the group's strategy has already started in this activity. So Jen, Kathleen, Tanya, if you have any additional description about this once I finish, please jump in. And the idea is that since we have so many different, each group has so many different things that it could work on, trying to think about the questions of the groups in just a few big buckets, as it were, about where the working group specifically and where the network as a whole generally should be in 6 months, a year from now, its capabilities, its reputation, what kind of impact it will have had or be poised to have, and collecting people's answers individually, and then as a group, deciding upon what kind of vision and impact the group can have together. And then really turning this idea of, okay, these are the specific things that we want to accomplish, and what is going to be our strategy for doing so. The tactics and the individual detailed plans come later, but just starting to form that broad plan. Now, given the limited time that we have this morning, I would be shocked if any group got to put together got to answer all of these questions and form an amazing strategy covering everything that they plan to big picture accomplished over the next year, but still a good start just to get people's thoughts together on the somewhat literal front page, the way we have the activity set up, and more generally for people who are new to the conversation to really see how these kinds of conversations form and decide whether it's something that makes sense for them. Now, as again, we have some people who are already part of more than one working group. So it's going to be a little tricky today for people who are interested in more than one working group or already part of more than one working group to join out. But really, if you are interested in any of these working groups, or more than one of these working groups, pick the one that seems most closely aligned to your interests today, but then also reach out and we will give you more information. Generally speaking, the working groups do not meet at the same time, so it is easy to be part of more than one group. And again, the next time that we have a full network meeting, we will again have a share out about what the groups have worked on. And of course, by that point, they will have gotten farther along in forming plans about which areas of policy, partnership, strategy they want to tackle. Before we start the process of splitting people out into the breakout rooms, I want to see if there are any questions from what we were talking about before, again, from the working groups in the network, or questions about the activity to come. And of course, the details of the activity will be shared in a couple of documents once people are actually in the groups.
Just to note that I'm still assigning. It's going to take a little while. The list of people are longer than the list of people in working groups, the list of attendees today. So going through that.
Thanks, Gary. Any questions or any thoughts that people have about the working groups specifically, or the role of the working groups for the network, or anything about how we're doing this? Because this is a pretty big change from what the network has done and been like to date. And this is sort of the pivotal moment when the network shifts to very active work in smaller groups. I know a lot of people. Oh, go ahead.
Hi, Dave. This is Diane. Carrie put in some links into the chat. Are those to be opened for the working groups now?
So you can totally go ahead and open things now. Once people are in the breakout rooms, then people will be able to work on these together, which should be easier. But yes, people, if anyone already knows that they want to join X group and wants to get a head start on checking out the document and seeing what overall the group is working on. I should mention that not each of the working groups, we back in, I think it was June or July, as a network, we did a survey on different goals that the network wants to focus on. And there were 10 sort of goals that rose. And then from those 10 goals, did another poll, and there are basically 3 priority goals that rose to the top. And rather conveniently, the 3 priority goals that rose highest sort of closely overlapped with 3 of the different working groups. There was one that was very much focused on employer relations. There was one that was very much focused on training and investment. And we had another one that was very much about, it was a more policy focused one. So all of those 3 working groups, all of them except strategy, have been using the priority goals as sort of a stepping stone or a launching pad for coalescing their activities, with the idea being that those 3 priority goals, which are sort of general phrasing about what the groups want to accomplish, will then be turned into targets, which are more concrete plans of, okay, we want to achieve X in Y way with Z timeline, for instance. None of those priority goals have yet been turned into a hard target, because it's both a very involved process in a way, and it's very important because it will set the path of how those working groups tackle things for probably the very least the next 6 months. Now, of course, none of these things are set in stone, so people are more than welcome within their working groups to change how they handle and how they view these processes. Does that answer the question? And are there any key questions?
Luana Hughes has her hand up. I think she has a question.
Ah, I'm having trouble seeing. If you can unmute yourself and go ahead. I am having trouble seeing.
Hey, Luana, you have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. So I wanted to talk about Betta's conversation about the RFP, and I was trying to think how we, as a collective, are going to advance the application. So when I heard a few of the groups, I mean, you know, those who have previous experience submitting RFPs, that's a wonderful thing. But are we collectively going after it for Jen? And if so, how are we best putting our foot forward? You know, my experience with RFPs is, you know, they're looking for resumes and the sort, and the background experience is going to be the thing that leverages you best. And so how are we doing this as a collective group? If, you know, if just one organization is taking the lead, or are we doing it as many different organizations being part of the process for the RFP? So just want more clarification on that.
Thanks, Donna. It's a great question. And there are sort of two key parts. One is for this RFP specifically, and one is for opportunities with third parties more generally. So right now, we don't have a system in place where company X or agency Y or NGO Z can have the Green Economy Network single entity be a key partner. Right now, the Green Economy Network is serving as a conduit and a portal, as it were, to all of its constituent members. Now, we've started discussions about what it could mean in the future for the Green Economy Network to act as a singular partner to different entities. That, of course, is very big, complicated discussion, because we would have to get approval from the network to act on behalf of members as a single entity. So figuring out exactly what that means, we haven't gone there yet. So for now, both for this RFP and more generally for opportunities like this, the Green Economy Network will not be a partner itself, although we will be having very close conversations with different groups and making sure that all members are aware of opportunities that come up. So most of you probably heard about the climate energy fellowships that we're telling people about, trying to tell people about opportunities like this. So whenever there are opportunities that make sense to our members, we'll try to get that information out as quickly as possible. Okay, I think we are ready. Oh, go ahead.
Very quick, I could just add a little bit to how the networks usually work, because we've built several networks. In this case, Jobs First NYC as an intermediary, if the group agrees to it, can be the coordinating partner for fundraising for the group, depending on what the requirements are. It can be a central vehicle for developing resources, will be part of our role anyway, to identify and develop resources. But particular grants, as we don't traditionally as an intermediary apply for public grants. In this case, there's a lot of public grants related to the Green Economy Network. The strategy committee, POPE, GCF, and NEW, along with JobsFirstNYC, would have to determine how we centralize fundraising effort for the network, and the network would also have to sign off on some of those fundraising efforts. For example, the building out and organizing of this effort here that we see now is supported by the Pinkerton, Weinberg, Deutsche Bank, Accenture. A couple of investors are supporting the development of this network. So when the network is fully launched, those are some of the investors that we would be talking to about supporting some of the additional activities of the network because of their initial interest in the organization of a network like this. But for other large investment opportunity, we would be often seeking input from the network. And what we look for are whatever comes out of the working group as central to the advancement of the network and as central to raising resources to support those, the framework or the work that's going to be happening around that. It would be what we take to look to see where we can seek resources to support that work on the ground. So once the ideas and the framework and the goals come out of the working groups, then they become the goals of the larger network. Then we begin to focus on what is needed to advance those goals and what resources are needed. But we often come back to the larger group to make sure that we're getting approval from the group around seeking resources.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. Thank you, Marjorie. As Marjorie captured very well, it is a big, complicated process. So do not expect any quick changes there, but we will definitely keep everyone informed of any changes that affect the network in a meaningful way. Since we are getting closer to time, I think we will probably need to collect the other questions and split into the breakout rooms for now. David Sorkin, I know, has a question. David, send me your question and I'm going to make sure it is properly answered. And anyone else who has questions, email me or email Carrie and we will get answers to everything. So let's see if we are ready to go into breakout rooms. And once people are in breakout rooms, they will get the links again and be able to jump into the activity. And don't worry, it doesn't get finished today. Hi, everyone. Thank you again. Sorry for pulling you out so suddenly of those breakout rooms. Totally hope to have more time with that. One key thing I want to point out is that access to these documents will remain. So anyone who started working on one of these documents, feel free to add your own answers between now and the next meeting. And again, if you have not already given us your information so that we can invite you to the next working group meeting of your choice, feel free to do so now in the chat or send an email to Carrie or me, and we will, or the specific co-lead if you already have that person's contact information, and we will make sure you get the invitation to the next meeting.
Okay, Dave, why don't we have a speed round, one volunteer from each group to share out 2 action items.
Great. Policy and advocacy, want to go first?
Sure, anyone want to jump in and share? Okay, it was very quick. We thought we had a little bit more time, but it was great discussion around, making policies attached to the current administration and just underscoring the importance of workforce leading the charge with resiliency efforts and what economic opportunities lie ahead, and making sure that what I loved was Annie shared is making sure that folks see that the participants, those who we work with, are the special sauce and making this all work within our sector.
Thank you. Nikita, I know you volunteered for our group. You want to share out our 2 action items?
Definitely. And it was definitely quick. So within the next 6 to 12 months, the Training and Wraparound Services Group, we feel it would be important to look at the evidence-based models that exist and see what worked and kind of use that on what can be replicated. I think it's very important also that within the next 6 months or so, that we come up with a strategy that has clear messaging about what exactly is what are green jobs, what are the career pathways, and then coming up with a platform of some sort, a newsletter, to make sure that we're updating on a regular basis, sharing and disseminating that information amongst our partners, and pooling and mapping out what are the services and trainings that are provided throughout the community and how we can come together and just kind of make it an easier transition for job seekers. So lots of amazing information started, lots of amazing work to come.
Thank you, Nikita. We will continue. And strategy group, or who did I miss before strategy? Employer partnerships.
Hi, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So actually, Nikita stole some of our joy. But one of the most important things that we thought that we could develop outside of identifying what jobs are in the sector was sharing the Green Job Board and making sure that that we are creating a resource for certification for those positions that require them. In addition, we're looking to impact employers by creating a sector for them to rely on so that they can feel that we are an effective partner.
Great. Thank you. Someone want to report for the strategy group? Looks like Catherine volunteered.
Yeah. So for the strategy, we focus first on the actual working group. So the first one was creating our next meeting. And instead of having it randomly, we're going to have set days and times. So we decided okay, so every 4th Tuesday of the month from 3 to 4, we'll be meeting. So we made that action group and did it. And then the next thing we said about is having someone to be able to go to other working groups to kind of get an update. So making sure we kind of have representation between working groups to make sure that we're constantly updated on whatever is being worked on. And then the last thing that we were mentioning, which I was typing in the chat to Amanda, was someone mentioned about reaching out to the next administration for the mayor candidate. So if that is Eric Adams, he was mentioning about having action plans for the youth, for jobs. So we want to make sure he has something for green economy as a focus. And for our one thing we mentioned was within this next 6 months, let's create our demands and what we would want implemented in that action plan, as well as try to make some form of contact.
Excellent. Thank you. That was great, everybody. Great contributions. We created this activity with knowing that it would be used at the next meeting, and we can continue to build on it. Sorry that we ran a little short on the workshop time, but we had a good conversation going into it that we didn't want to cut short. So thanks, everybody. There's a link for the next meeting, but we will also send out a calendar invite, and I will send action items and next steps in an email because we are over our time with you. So thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Carrie. Thank you, everyone.
Take care. Thanks, everyone.
See you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.